Stormwreck Isle has its secrets. Are you ready to discover both its treasures and its terrors? This box will get you started playing Dungeons & Dragons. We're going over what's inside. Let's open it. On this channel, we break down the rules and offer tips, tricks, unboxing, and reviews all about different tabletop role-playing games. Today, we're going to go over D&D's starter set that was released in 2022. First, I want to let you know that you only need one of these starter sets. Your group of gaming friends does not each need to purchase these. You only need to share one box. Let's open this box up and we'll go over what's inside. Let's see if I can get this to stay right here. Probably not. All right, so inside this box, you're going to find a little plastic bag with a set of polyhedral dice. There are 6 dice in here. There's a 20-sided, 12-sided, 10-sided, 6-sided, 8-sided, and 4-sided. You only need this one set of dice to play this game if you want. Everybody can share the same set of dice. Now, you're more than welcome to have each player go out and get their own set of dice if they'd like. You can find them pretty inexpensive, either at your local game store or on Amazon. You're also going to find in this box the starter set rulebook. This is roughly a little over 30 pages of just some of the basic rules that you need to play this game. This rulebook is going to be beneficial for both the Dungeon Master and the players to read. You may have to share it. You can also find a copy of the basic rules online for free as well. But this is going to go over some of the basics that everyone at the table needs to know. This book is split into separate chapters. You kind of have a little welcome introduction, and then chapter 1 is all about the rules of the game. Chapter 2 goes over like equipment and like armor and weapons and things like that. And then chapter 3 is all about how magic works in this game. We're going to find a booklet for the adventure. The adventure in this starter set is called Dragons of Stormwreck Isle. There's a great artwork up here with some characters fighting dragons. Now, I will tell you that only the Dungeon Master should be looking at this book, not the players. There's spoilers in here for the players. If you intend to be a player in this game, do not look through this book. Oh, that's where that leads. In fact, I'm not even a huge fan of having the chapters here on the front cover, because at a glance, people are going to be able to look at the chapter titles and kind of see a little bit of what's ahead. I would like to see Wizards of the Coast do the entire front of the book of just like intriguing artwork and put like the chapters and the table of contents on the inside. So again, this book is Dungeon Master's eyes only. The other thing you're going to find in this box is 5 pre-made characters. Now these are on double-sided character sheets, and pre-made characters are going to be the quickest and easiest way to get started. Now, there is a lot of fun to be had in customizing your own Dungeons & Dragons character and making one from scratch. But if you're looking to just jump in, get playing, and see whether or not this is a game you'd enjoy, I suggest going with the pre-made characters. Of these pre-made characters, you're going to find an elf fighter, an elf wizard, a dwarf cleric, a halfling rogue, and a human paladin. These types of characters were built and chosen for this adventure because they're pretty simple to understand and make it nice and well balanced so that everybody has a good time. Lastly, you're going to find in this box like a little advertising sheet from Wizards of the Coast with all the D&D socials on it. One thing I do want to address is the fact that the front of this box says that it's for 2 to 6 players. The previous starter set did not mention being able to play with 2 players. It was the Essentials kit that mentioned being able to have fewer players because it had some modified rules. There are only 5 pre-made character sheets in here, so 5 characters and a Dungeon Master would be the 6 players. However, I don't feel that works the same as the 2 players because you can't really do this with just a Dungeon Master and a single player. The rulebook does suggest that if you have fewer than 4 players playing individual characters, to perhaps double up, where players could choose 2 character sheets and run 2 characters through the adventure. And I think that's perfectly fine. I don't think that's a difficult thing to do, to play multiple characters. But if you literally just had 2 people, a Dungeon Master, and the player is going to try to play 3 or 4 characters, I think that's a little much. So I would say that going with 6 players, the DM, and 5 players, you kind of need 3, the DM and at least 2 players. Now, remember that I mentioned that this book here, the adventure book, is just for the Dungeon Master's eyes only. Let's go over the difference between being a Dungeon Master versus being a player so that you can decide which one you'd like to be. The person who wants to be the Dungeon Master should really enjoy telling stories. They have a little more creative control in the game, and they should be a little comfortable with improvising at least a little bit. When I mention improvising, I just mean that the adventure book may tell you, if your players decide to do this then do this. If your players decide to do this, then do this. And your players may decide to do something completely different than those options. So it just requires a little bit of improvising on your part to come up with some really neat ideas in a storytelling way. I would also mention that being the DM involves a little bit more organization and a little bit more prep time. You really ought to read through the whole adventure before you ever even start playing, and you might want to brush up on certain sections and maybe the basic rules before you play each time so that some of these things are fresh in your mind. Just reading through the adventure once, you're not going to remember the whole thing over the entire time it takes you guys to play the game. Now let's go over some perks of being a player. A player really gets the opportunity to delve into their character or characters, if they're playing more than one, and really concentrate on the growth of that character. You're just responsible for that character's perspective of what's going on. I hesitate to say it's kind of more of a just show up and play role, because in all honesty, you do need to do a little prep work as a player. I encourage you, please do not just show up at the game not knowing anything about your character, not knowing anything about the rules, and not knowing anything about how your character's ability works. You still want to brush up on these things before a game session so that you're ready to play. Now you can probably tell from these two different descriptions that these are two very different roles at the table, but I'll tell you, they're just different creatively. Neither one is any more important than the other. Go ahead and let me know in the comments down below which one you're going to choose to be. The player or a dungeon master. If you're finding this video helpful so far, go ahead and hit the thumbs up button and give us a like. It certainly helps more adventurers find us. You're also going to want to subscribe to the channel if you're into all things tabletop role-playing. Breaking down the rules, tips, tricks, unboxings, and reviews, that's what you'll find here. Another thing I want to mention about jumping into this starter set to start playing Dungeons & Dragons is the importance of a Session 0. Now, Session 0 is some discussions between the players and the Dungeon Master before the game ever even begins. This can actually be done maybe in a chat group or online, or it can be done in person. Maybe it'll only take 20 minutes before your game starts, or some of the discussions may take you a couple hours, so you might want to have them before you get together. That's up for you to decide. So what gets covered in a Session 0? You certainly want to discuss the theme of the adventure. Obviously, this adventure is called Dragons of Stormwreck Isle. So let's see, we have an island setting and we have a dragon theme. That may not be something that intrigues all your players. You don't really want to tell them nothing about the game at all and just invite people over to play Dungeons & Dragons and not give them any information about what game they might be playing. It might not be their cup of tea. You also want to discuss scheduling. How often are you going to play? Are you going to play every night until you get through this awesome adventure? Do you only have time to play once a week? Do you only have time to play twice a month? How long are the gaming sessions going to be? According to the rulebook, this game can be played anywhere from 6 to 10 hours to get through the entire adventure, depending on how much role-playing there is or how long combat takes. That could be spread over 2 sessions or 6 sessions. You need to discuss this to figure out what works best for your group. You also probably want to have a backup plan for cancellations. What's your plan if someone tells you last minute that they can't make it? Another good thing to discuss in a Session 0 is how to address note-taking or map-making. D&D, a lot of it takes place in your mind with your imagination, and it doesn't necessarily mean there's always a map to look at. And it doesn't always mean that the Dungeon Master wants to keep repeating themselves. You want to find out if people at the table would like to take notes, if they would not like to take notes. You might want one person to take all the notes for everybody. You're going to find that in a game that takes on average 8 hours to get through the whole adventure, players may not remember something you told them back in the first hour or two of the game. So they might have a lot of questions if they haven't written things down. As a Dungeon Master, are you okay with just giving them that information again? Or do you expect your players to take really good notes and have things written down? Some games will also designate someone as the map maker. So when the Dungeon Master is describing what a room looks like or what this part of the forest looks like, how big an area is, where the doors are located and things, someone can actually map it out. Session 0 is a great time to go over expectation. What type of game does everybody want to play? Specifically talking about people's expected play style. Your game can be really serious, or it can be really silly, or it can be somewhere in between. Also, how much role-playing versus how much combat would the players like to do? Some players like to run through the adventure just killing everything. Some people like to talk to everyone and figure out all the stories. Somewhere in the middle, there could be a happy medium. There is a resource on page 14 of the 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide that is called Game Expectations. This form has areas to fill out information about the game theme. There's also a section to jot down any potentially sensitive elements that any of your friends may have about playing the game. Perhaps they're absolutely against having any kind of romance take place in the game at all. It's just not something they're interested in. You can jot that down. There's a section for players' hopes and expectations. And lastly, there's also a section for at-the-table concerns. You might want to discuss, are we going to have some casual alcohol at our game? Is everyone at the table okay with a lot of cursing and swearing? Also, what are the rules if you roll the dice and some of them fall on the floor? Do they need to be re-rolled again on the table? If you go over these things before the game even starts, you'll prevent possible frustration. Let me know in the comments down below if you'd like me to make a follow-up video for the Dungeon Master How to Run Chapter 1. We can go over how to get the players hooked on the story, the basic rules, how to run Chapter 1 along with some tips, and how to avoid some common mistakes. And remember, it's always free to hit the like button and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you get notified of upcoming videos. But if you'd like to monetarily support the channel a little bit, I do have a link below for a Buy Me a Coffee. See you in the next video, where we break down the rules so you can game with confidence.